So I have the unenviable task of catching you all at 4:45 at the end of a conference where you have been talking about very in-depth technical subject matters all day with your colleagues. So hopefully this talk's going to be a little bit more light-hearted, a little bit more relaxing, just ease you into the keynotes where you can pass out ready for the drinks afterwards. So today we are going to talk about community-led innovation through the lens of what we're doing within open source, right? So I always find the best way to do this is with a little bit of a narrative. So in the spirit of open source, we're going to blatantly rip off somebody else. We're going to start off with a little bit of Lord of the Rings. So we talk about community-led innovation. We want to think about things in emerging technology. So in Zenith, that's the Emerging Technology Special Interest Group within FINOS. Our goal is to go and look at the things that are not quite technology ready, that we know are going to be coming down the pipeline in the future. We can concentrate on the actual, but still have a conversation about what things do we need to prepare for. This starts to demystify and remove some of the fear around emerging technology just by opening up conversation and starting to share expertise. Here, we want to think of it as not being so scary and not having the risk of someone coming along and snatch it away from you. Because there's more than enough of people who are going to say that, oh, this isn't ready for prime time, don't waste your time doing this, we need you to concentrate on the active stuff. And these are the forces that can slow us down, right? Told you I'm sticking with the theme here, right? You might not like what's coming next. So these forces can sometimes feel awkward to get around. You might be similar to the experience I had, where I was a junior developer, had a lot of bright ideas. The more senior team were like, no, 100% we need to concentrate on business as usual. So they did the logical thing of punting me out of the development team I was in into the innovation office of that particular company, which worked out a lot better because I was no longer leaving little things for people to go and step on, right? The innovation office was focused on what is going to come next, and that was part of a maturation pipeline. So what we're starting to do here in FINOS is think about what is the maturation pipeline for these ideas, start to look across the whole industry. So you're not alone on this quest, right? Help comes from many places, right? This is where I always like to have a little bit of fun. We always add in a little bit of memes when we're doing these presentations. So, for example, the Linux Foundation, obviously core to everything we do here in FINOS, they're putting out things like Hyperledger and LF Edge, which have massive communities around them. You can go and get support, and you can start to integrate that into your idea. If you're looking at GitHub, there's a lot of things that are supported not only through GitHub itself, but some of the projects that are up in there. And then if you're part of FINOS, FINOS obviously has the FINOS landscape. Now, if you've never seen the FINOS landscape, and FINOS is kind of a new thing, you here really check out open source fintech. There's a number of projects run by a number of organizations within there, special interest groups. And if you scan that, or if that's illegible, just because I wasn't too sure on the size, you can go to landscape.finos.org. You'll see it all broken down by categories. There's always something in there that has a specialism that's relevant to you. But outside of these big players, and mainly because I ran out of people in the Fellowship of the Ring that I could get a good photo of, there's a number of other, whoops, there we go, I wanted to do this, it didn't come up. So there's a number of different things that are out there, and not only have they got their own communities, they've got their own tool stacks around there. So this is all open source in its spirit. While we're one part of the wider open source community, it's about being able to join with other communities and start to bring those expertise in. And while you might be one organisation or one person within that organisation, you can reach out to these groups and to us, and we can coordinate some of your ideas together. Because with the right approach, even the most difficult task can be completed efficiently, right? Yeah, I thought somebody would get a kick out of that one, you know. This really comes down to the collective intelligence of the wider group leads to the most beneficial actions. So we sometimes get bogged down in things like architecture as code, where there's best practices that have evolved over a long period of time. But when we start to think about breaking ground in absolutely new types of technology, we still want to learn from the ways that we've done it before, but we know we have to change it and modulate it for different things. So you're starting to see this in artificial intelligence. And we'll come back to that in a wee bit. Because if we do all of this right, that sets us up for many future adventures, right? But we've also got the pre-made guidance, and this is what we're going to talk about in the back half of the talk, right? What we are, Zenith, it's an emerging technology focused on pulling everybody together to look at what's coming next. We do that through these three things here: collaborative efforts, removing barriers in implementation, and then starting to project out those examples of adoption, which now, thankfully, because we're a year old, we were in fact the first SIG that wasn't created as a result of the formation of FINOS. So we're like that weird bumpy thing that steadily became a planet, and we're still in that like Pluto phase, we're a planet we know it. They're starting to get more of a planet because we get mentioned at keynotes, so thumbs up. But what we've been able to do is take things like these collaborative efforts. So we have 2 calls per month. One of those calls is public, and that enables everybody to come together, not just the people in FINOS, but people outside. And we'll actively go out and look for people who are working within different parts of different industries to get them to come in and talk. So if you're about some of the other talks you may have seen, there was a PhD graduate who was from the University of Edinburgh who was talking about how people were interfacing with AI systems, how they were actually starting to use it, and starting to say, well, this is the cognitive bias you've got when you introduce this system. You assume these users are already going to know it. And for us as developers and people who are working within software, we might take that for granted. So it gives us the ability to have this forum where we can pull in specialists and start to talk about that. But we also here have the members only call, and we call that the brain trust call, right? Now the brain trust call is only FINOS members, and we come together as an anonymised group. So it's like Chatham House rules, which I was taught lately is not the same as Queensberry rules. So I used to get the two of them mixed up being a Glaswegian. But essentially means that you can come in and all of your contributions are completely anonymised. So you don't have to represent your company. Anything you say doesn't get attributed to your name. But it's about then as a collective group having a position paper that we can output from here. So this then leads us to be able to develop guiding principles. And we've used this successfully by taking a look at what does collaborative data look like when we start to think about financial services, artificial intelligence. Now, obviously, there's an aspirational goal of going towards like a finance LLM. But when you start talking about that, you've got to think about investing $3 million in NVIDIA chips that you're going to compete with Elon Musk because he wants to buy them for his cars. But actually, Psyche wants them for another company. There's a lot of demand. We don't want to do that. But we want to look at the principles of the fundamental stuff we can do. So what we've been able to do from there in the Brain Trust is start to think of what does the database look like? What do the metadata that we need to pull from? What's the scope of the data we're going to put into that repository first? And we'll come back to that in a little bit on the output, but it's the fact that that was a decision by committee. Any FINOS member can send any representatives from their organisation to these Brain Trust meetings, so it doesn't have to be only the OSPO. If you've got somebody who's working on some weird, wacky project, right, in the Harry Potter under the stairs part of your office, you can pull them out, send them on to the Brain Trust, and that's great. We'll sit, talk with them, they're already represented, and at that point, that's something they might be able to take back and spread out. If there's one thing I could ask from everybody, if you are a FINOS member, and it's the first time you're like, what, there's an emerging technology programme? Go share that with your distinguished engineers, your technical fellows, your innovation offices and your OSPOs. Tell them to come out and talk to us, because we're very receptive to speaking to them. Next, we want to look at removing barriers in implementation. So obviously everybody has the different set of circumstances. You might not happen to have a neuroscientist on your staff who's going to sit and do neural interfacing technology with you, but somebody else might, and they might be able to talk about why that's important for you to make the strategic decision to go out and get a neuroscientist. We do this through a little thing we call our POC program. So we start off by having anyone, whether they're a FINOS member or not, coming in to pitch ideas. When you take that idea pitch and you come in and say, I think this would be a great idea for us to do as a collective organisation, we then help to refine that, try and get you some support. Part of that support is we try to match you up with an internal sponsor within FINOS who would say, yeah, if this was developed, we could see that being useful for our organisation or for everybody within FINOS as a whole. At that point, we can look to see, can we access some of the platforms, some of the technical expertise, some of the intelligence that we've got within FINOS, and then we can help you to actually create something, right? And again, we're creating open source. We're then going to take that, we're going to push that towards FINOS Labs with the end goal that we're going to have a brand new product within the FINOS architecture and the ecosystem that anyone can go and play with or derive from. So a couple of examples of where we've done this before. So everybody's favourite DLT, we've been working with Hedera, and you can go in and check this out. They gave us access to Guardian and Stablecoin Studio. So what we've got is a little post on there, and it talks through how you get started with it. And we've built that out as what we're calling our DLT sandbox. Right? So this is exploration that you can go and do, and you can play about with Hedera, Swirled Labs, and HBAR Foundation's kit. What we're now starting to look at is different use cases where we're going to be building a hackathon towards the end of the year, and then opening that out as a global event for everybody to come in and take part of. So this is actively in conversation that we are devising. It's going to be a FINOS run event. So if there are thoughts within your collective organisation about where you would like to see DLT, moving away from pictures of monkeys and NBA short clips and stuff like that, but actually going into something meaningful and tangible for your organisation, we're in the design phase of this hackathon just now, and we'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Going over, you might have also seen there's just a little bit of hype at the moment about AI, right? We've been contributing to the AI readiness SIG as well, so you can see some of what we've been doing there. We ran a whole workshop with a number of FINOS members yesterday. Everybody who's ever been in a corporate design thinking thing is having PTSD to lots and lots of post-it notes. That's my life, right? So we were running that at the Red Hat offices, so big thanks to Red Hat for hosting that. And usually a design thinking workshop's like 8 hours, you know, somebody muttering of your life you're never going to get back. But realistically, we had 1 hour, so this was the output of 1 hour. We came up with 50 ideas across how we can build out a realistic artificial intelligence system that's going to be beneficial to all the members of the open source community. Right? Not all of them were absolute slam dunks and home runs. We did do a little bit of prioritisation, but what we have ended up with is a clear and concise guidance of what the low-hanging fruit is that we are now going to go and try and realise for the rest of this year. And the hope is that if any of these come along to OSFF in New York, there will hopefully be some announcements at that point of some repos and repositories that we'll be making public. But this is all part of what Zenith is set up to do. It's meant to be like the innovation office within FINOS, where we pull things together. And even if there's a wider conversation, obviously within AI readiness, about what's the strategic direction of AI, how do we want to think about how Copilot's going to work, what we're going to do about democratising our data. You can't come and touch our data, but we want to consume everybody else's. Those aren't conversations that are going to be solved overnight. But the fundamental first steps that we can take are the types of things that we can do. So if that is of interest, and I promise that all the slides that we do monthly are more entertaining than this. We have done things on themes. We have an open discussion that if you come in, you can suggest a theme. We've done D&D after Baldur's Gate, where we photoshopped all of the members of the SIG as D&D characters, and that went down really well. So we always take suggestions. But if you'd like to come along, it's the Zenith Technology, Emerging Technology SIG. This is the QR code that will put up an email. Just send the email as is. That will then subscribe you to the mailing list that we have. We send out all the meeting notices from there. So it's the second Thursday of the month is the Brain Trust. The fourth Thursday of the month is the public call. And, you know, come along, talk to us. We really want to hear ideas. We want to sit and work with people to get in there. No idea is too ridiculous. We are looking at things ranging from 4D printing systems of reactive materials for individual computing components. I've got a neural interface in my bag at the moment from other conversations that we've got. Nothing's off the table, right? We really want that weird, wacky stuff that's sitting in your mind. I really want to work on that. Can we do a project collaboratively? The answer is yes. So no, thank you for coming along to this talk. I really appreciate that it is at the end of the day and you may be a little bit burnt out. But if you do want to ask questions, I am here to field everything. I've had all sorts of questions from how we run the SIG to people asking like pub quiz style questions about what the hell is four-dimensional printing. I will do my best to do all of that, but if you would also like to connect, my QR code is there. You can come up and scan it. That will get you connected to me on LinkedIn. But thanks very much, and we hope that we'll see all of you at the next Zenith call, which will be in July. Thank you very much. So questions in the room?
What's the most wacky thing you're looking at?
Oh, wacky things that we're looking at just now. We are actively looking into some really interesting use. In fact, I'll pull it out because it is the neural interface one. Right. So we connect with some of the other special interest groups within FINOS to start thinking about what stuff is coming out. So this here is a Mindlift kit, right? Inside it is a Muse headband, which looks like this. And this is a portable encephalogram that connects to my phone. And if I put this on, the light comes on, it should connect to my phone. I need to take my glasses off when I put this on. It's got copper there that will connect onto the front of my head. These will read my pulse at the back of my ear. And sits like that. I want to try and mod it so I can do a Geordie LaForge cosplay. I can't wear my glasses properly, so sorry, these are going to be askew. These are all a bit weird now, so if I start tilting, right? But this, well, we've been working to put this into an SDK, right? This is really weird, seeing you that squint. So the weird, wacky project we did just before OSF, is anybody familiar with the little dinosaur game from Chrome when you're offline? Yeah, right, and it's the wee thing that runs along, and you've got to jump over the cactuses. I can control that dinosaur with this, and it's cool as hell. Oh, 100%. But it's not that I have to think about the dinosaur jumping. I have to blink. And the muscles, as they contract here, send an electrical pulse. And I've coded that to just be up. So the wee dinosaur jumps. I've got no control over how high it jumps. But it jumps, and it's like telepathy, and it's cool as hell. We're now working on it. I'm taking this off because I can't deal with vertigo here, right? I'm 6'4", it's bad enough. So when we've got this, we can also start to look at the packets as they come in. So we've been scanning in some of those packets, and there's a little electrode. See, my hand-eye coordination goes to hell because I've got no glasses on. So if we want to look at specific things, this little electrode here is much easier to deal with than carving open my skull and putting a chip in, right? So because we're working with neuroscientists, they can tell us what part of the brain corresponds to different type of activity. So the USB goes in the back here. That, I've got a little, what looks like a Doritos Domino's sauce packet, right? Just like that, right? And that's got like this gel in it. I put that on, put it on, right, and it's conductive. What happens there is that depending on what part of my head I put it onto, based on the neuroscientist's advice, I can then start to collect different types of brain activity. So one we've been able to do is start to look at thoughts, right? You'd be like, why would you want to do that? Well, if we start to look in security, right, being able to have something like this, where you're not actively reading someone's mind, but you're checking the fingerprint to see that it is them, right? And so you can tell if somebody's like given access to somebody else is getting access to a computer. But you can also use this to say, right, instead of a password, we're going to show you a series of images, and you've got to select the pre-selected images and focus on it. And you looking at that particular image triggers a certain type of brainwave pattern that then becomes your authorization token that can go through. That's the early stage we're looking at. Obviously, super not ready for prime time. You have to be quite bald for this to work, we found. So me being the hairiest person in FINOS has been the worst person to try this with. They are talking about shaving little patches in me to do that, and I've said, no, we're not doing that yet. But it's on the cards. But we're looking at that and thinking about how that could work in terms of authorization. But then if we can make it a little easier, so it's just this and not an electrode, can we also start looking at this as an alternate control system for a computer, for diversity and inclusion? So being able to give somebody who is, heavy arthritis if they're an older user, really struggling to type, can this increase their productivity? Can this also be used to start to detect when someone doesn't understand something? So if you've ever had the joys of being on a phone to the bank and you have that whole thing that you're going and agreeing a mortgage or something, they have to read the terms and conditions to you, or you have to physically read terms and conditions before you sign something off in a lawyer's office. How many people are guilty here are just going, yeah, right? A lot of people, but sometimes it's really critical. Sometimes it could be, interest rates are going up, your bills are going to go up, and you've maybe got somebody who's like, how's this going to affect me? And you're trying to explain it to them, but do they really get it? You can now start to detect, in combination with this and something like a Fitbit, you can start to look at cortisol spikes and brain activity. And at that point, could that maybe change the script dynamically? Could that maybe explain something in a different way so that they're picking up? Can we start to use that as something that can do reactive interface and experience for users? Right? Obviously, this not going to fit at the moment for everybody because not everybody's got one, but it's a potential that we can start to think about that. And so, while it might sound wacky, and you're looking at me, and now that I can actually see everybody's faces, I don't know what the reactions were while I was wearing that stupid thing, but it's looking at that sort of stuff and starting to challenge, what could it do? Are there things that it could do something valuable enough for us to go and expend the effort? And is there common effort that we can look at? Rather than thinking about how we do it in our own companies, our own environments, is there shared exploration? Would it make sense to put this as a Java SDK, a C++ SDK? Like, what's the one that's going to get the most use in the first instances of it? Those sort of conversations. How would this change how architecture works? How would this change how you're interacting with your clients or how your clients are interacting with you? And through building up this intelligence, what we aim to do is create things like primers, where it documents where we are just now and where we want to get to. That primer is then open source, so anyone can come in and contribute to it. I've got this idea, this person I know is in research, and that doesn't have to be just FINOS members. We can open the primer stuff there. Those primers could then potentially be used for education. You know, oh, I'm really interested in quantum computing, but I've no idea how to get started. Hey, there's a primer that sort of gives me the gist of it, and then it links out to some training guides. You know, there's some fundamental things I could do. Within a month, you might be programming using something like Qiskit, right? Which is a programming software through Python. You're starting to use quantum simulators, and you start exploring with it. The idea is that we bring that intelligence and we keep the conversation going, rather than just being shut down because it's not ready yet. That's the spirit of the program. But yeah, weirdest, coolest thing I've got, my little Domino's sauce electrode, I guess. Any other questions? Promise I've not got any more cool things to pull out. Yeah.
The examples of stuff you're looking at where it's genuinely scary because you feel like crap, that's going to apply
Well, no, what it's going to do is it's going to simplify the terms and conditions based on what you need to know. That's the easy one. The scary part is everything that we look at in emerging technology, we think about how it can be used for crime, right? It's a big part of it. So obviously, if you've got a quantum computer, you are looking at decrypting things. But thankfully, no matter how fast the quantum computer gets, the encryption algorithms go faster than the decryption algorithms, right? It's just the nature of mathematics there. But we also think about the aspects of, think about something like neurointerface. You're reading brainwaves, right? Those brainwaves have to go into a system, and even if that isn't being read by a person, it's PII. It's new PII that can be created. How would you feel if suddenly, instead of all the drawings you made of Sonic fan art when you were 12 getting ripped off DeviantArt to go train DALL-E, it's now every thought you had when you were a teenager going in to train a cognition system, right? That's fundamentally terrifying for us who grew up with the start of the internet, and then laughing at these kids who are getting cancelled years later because of the stupid stuff they put up, like Jaden Smith. What if that was suddenly a thing, that now your thoughts were going in there, right? So we start to think about that, and we start to think about controls, and we start to think maturely and responsibly about it, while making memes and stupid jokes in our own Slack channel about it. But it's the fact that those conversations are starting, but we also start to challenge, like, even though we're thinking about the criminal things, we think about the positive good that these technologies can have. So one of the technologies we're also looking at is how satellite communication can start to work across financial services. And you'll think, well, it's no biggie, but the satellite communication we're looking at could be high-altitude telecommunication arrays, which could be controlled by a balloon. That goes up and essentially makes a cone of telecommunication down that could then open up financial services access in remote communities. And that could then be a communication standard that goes out that we can now just interface in, that we don't have to worry about relays and exchanges. Right? Obviously, it's got a lot of practical uses outside of financial services, but the communication of what's going to be the encryption standards on that, how are we going to define that so we can give that to the satellite manufacturers and stuff as well, so when they're starting to think about that, that's part of the conversation we also want to share the primer, because we can talk as customers of using these things. This is what we would like to see. We can also go and engage with regulators, which is nobody's favourite activity, by saying this is what we think as a collective about what this technology can do. Right? Obviously, we missed the boat with AI and DLT, but can we start to think about what does neural interface governance look like? Because that's obviously got a hell of a lot of crossover in the biomedical, but we can contribute because we might be active users of it. So it's more about some of the scary stuff is, oh God, we have to do adult stuff, but it's also the crime. There's a lot of crime conversation in Zenith. If you're into true crime podcasts, we're like the thing that's going to imagine the next generation of true crime podcasts. So that might be a hook to get you in. Anyone else? No, you are cool, you're now free, you're released from this. Go forth, enjoy your keynotes, and we'll see you in the future. Thanks very much.